Hello, this is my submission for Games Network Programming. Upon loading the game up, you'll be asked to enter in a username to authenticate yourself. This will set up a profile for you using Unity Services initialization options, giving you a unique player ID value, and your username will then be stored and displayed when you enter lobbies or join games. After authenticating, you'll be shown several buttons. How to play will show you how the controls and the goal of the game. Quit will exit the application. Leaderboards will display a leaderboard linked to Unity's gaming services that's configured on the Unity Cloud website. However, I did have some technical difficulties and time restraints when trying to fully implement this system, so it will instead just auto-generate you a name and only updates the score when the button is pressed. I'm aware this isn't ideal and has no effect on the game, but thought it might be worth keeping in to show that it is working and Unity's Cloud is just not fully linked up to the game. Upon pressing play, you'll be greeted with a lobby screen. Here you can refresh the view of current lobbies, or you can create your own and configure it by changing the name of it, which level it will take place on, how many people can be in the lobby from 2 up to 4, as well as setting it private or public. This makes use of another one of Unity's cloud gaming services called Lobby, which lets you overview data on how many requests and how many bytes are being transferred over the network. The lobby is kept up with a heartbeat to ensure it doesn't disappear from searches. It can only be removed once the host leaves the lobby. The lobby updates for all the users when a player joins and is kicked from the lobby as well. When you're ready to play, the host can start the game, which will turn on another one of Unity's cloud gaming services called Relay. This will then update the lobby and with a Relay join code, which all clients in the lobby will be able to access and join the host game with. Once a relay has been created, it looks for the closest server to host and connects them to it. Like Lobby Relay also shows you important statistical data as well about your game, such as the total bandwidth consumption both globally and by region. The player movement script holds most of the important networking code for the players in this game. Upon spawning in, players will be assigned a number. This number will determine where they spawn in the game so that they don't merge on top of each other and give off weird visual effects. Players will then grab a list of all player icons and find one of the matching player ID value to display their data to themselves and other players. This data includes how many kills they have personally acquired, and it also shows how many throwing knives they have left, how many lives they have left, and how much current health they have left. The players update their icons through an assortment of server and client RPC calls, and the player object also makes use of built-in Unity components like the network animator to synchronize animations. This information is updated accordingly when any of these values are changed using the RPC calls with no ownership of the server required, so the clients can also make these changes when needed. I thought I should also mention as well that in the event where a host disconnects, all clients are returned to the lobby menu so that you can join another session via the host disconnect manager. There are 3 ways the game can end. The first involves the game's network timer that counts down from 2 minutes. When a client joins the game, the timer will automatically sync to the host timer value to ensure that each player has an accurate depiction of how much time is left to complete the level. Once the timer reaches 0, the game will end and will send the players back to the lobby menu screen. Another way the game can end is if all the players run out of lives. Each time a player dies, a check is made on the game manager, which keeps a record of all the current players in the game to see if they're out of lives. If the game manager finds that all the players are out of lives, it will just end the game and send the players back to the lobby. The final way to end the game is to collectively defeat all the enemies within the level. While the game keeps track of players' individual scores, it also combines them into a collective score that is used in checks for when to open up the next stage of the level, or when the level has no more enemies left and to end it. All 3 of these ways are monitored by the game manager, with whom makes use of both network variables such as network total kills and kills to complete level, along with local variables such as all players out of lives, to ensure that the moment that one of these conditions is met, the outcomes is executed across all clients at the same time. For dynamic environment, there are multiple extra live power-ups placed within the levels that can move back and forth between 2 points in a ping-pong-like motion. These movements are synced, and once one is picked up, it is despawned on the server, so it's no longer there for any of the clients. If a player dies, they'll play a death animation on all clients, and a check will be made to send them to their assigned respawn spot. In the event that 2 players die at the same time, they won't respawn in the same spot and have collision issues. When respawning players, collisions for that particular player will be turned off when they're moving back to their position to prevent any other players that are kind of in the kind of line between the player's position and their respawn position getting caught up in having weird collision issues. And once they've reached the respawn point, their collisions will be turned back on and they'll be made visible again. And similarly, once the enemy dies, the colliders will be turned off across all clients for them, and after 1 second they'll be despawned. For projectiles, all clients see the synchronized movement of the projectile when it moves across the screen. Upon collision with an enemy or a barrier, the knife's destruction will also be synchronized. Knife's rotation is also synchronized across the client, and when a knife does collide with an enemy, an animation will be played for all clients of the enemy falling over and dying. And then it would follow the same logic of being despawned after 1 second. Wrapping up, I would like to clarify and apologise for a few bugs that you'll most likely encounter. When dealing with an enemy, it's very likely that upon collision you'll have a force sending you in the opposite way, which will make you slower until you collide with a wall and come to a stop, in which it'll stop applying that force. I identified this as being a bug relating to the rigid bodies, and it was not a networking issue, as it would apply that force over the network. But I was unable to solve it due to prioritising other tasks. Another bug you might encounter is to do with the countdown timer, more specifically the UI element for it. The timer shows up in the level once you complete it, but instead of clearing like it's supposed to when you return back to the menu, it seems to stay on the screen. This seems to be an issue on the host at least, in the build, but in the editor it does clear. I'm not entirely sure why, but once you join another game, it updates the counter to be the correct value anyway, so it doesn't affect gameplay. And finally, I'd ask that when you're naming servers or yourself using the authentication process at the start of the game, to avoid using spaces in your names or of the servers or your character's name, as it seems to break and I didn't have enough time to put a check in to ask you to retry